I brought him.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please note those in attendance?
All will be noted.
Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, as I look around this room, I'm feeling exceptionally safe tonight with all the first responders. So welcome to all of our first responders for being here. All right, item 2, approval of the minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the regular city council meeting from March 25, 2025.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Item 3, adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes or corrections to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have an agenda. Item 4, consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. All right. Item 5, visitors and presentations. I understand we're going to be swearing in 4 firefighters tonight. So, Chief, whenever you're ready.
Mayor, members of council, thank you. We're going to be swearing in 4 firefighters that were all hired in 2024 of last year. All of them have successfully completed their probationary period in the training program. So I'm going to call them up, and once we get everybody up here, city clerk will read their oath to them, and then we'll have their significant others come up and do the badge pinning. So first, we'll invite up firefighter EMT Jack Cole. Jack is served with the Vadnais Heights Fire Department, also with our department since last year. And then firefighter paramedic Ryan Broderick. He serves on the North St. Paul Fire Department, also served on the Woodbury Fire Department. M Health EMS is a paramedic in Baldwin, Wisconsin EMS. And then firefighter paramedic Annalise. She served on Centennial Fire with her dad, who will be coming up to pin her. He still serves on Centennial Fire. She worked at Lakeview EMS as a paramedic. SBM Fire is an EMS educator and coordinator and trainer. And then firefighter paramedic Ella Devine. She served on Roseville Fire and St. Anthony Fire. All right, so this is everybody.
Okay, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota, and will discharge and faithfully execute the duties devolving upon me as a member of the fire department for the city of White Bear Lake without fear or favor, to the best of my judgment and ability. Congratulations.
All right, now I'll invite Maddie and George to come up.
Photographic ballet. right. Congratulations again to our newly sworn-in firefighters. It always amazes me whenever we do the pinning of the badges. It's always tricky, always fumbles through it, but that's how it goes sometimes. So I'm glad everybody got their badge on. Thank you again, Chief. And I think the second item goes to you, 5B, donations of the White Bear Lake Lions Club Fire Department Vial of Life program. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. I'd like you consider adopting a resolution accepting a donation from the White Bear Lake Lions Club in the amount of $2,300 in support of our new Vial of Life program. Primary purpose of this program is to make pertinent and vital information readily available to responders in the event of an emergency. The funds will help to cover the cost of vinyl sleeves that the information is stored in. And then, I don't know, do you want me to elaborate on what that program is now or later?
A little more now would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to call on Chief Waylander because he's the one that's kind of gotten this going, so I'll have him come up. I'll pass these out, Josh.
Mayor, members of council, thanks for the opportunity to explain a little bit about the program. This is a program for the community of the elderly population and the assisted living facilities within our service area to provide them a very clean, organized document that we can use in construction during an emergency. So we're asking them to fill out the form that comes in the pouch, and it gives us the pertinent information that we need to help serve them in a time of emergency. It's very basic, very easy to fill out, and it helps our crew and also the person that we're there to help with get the proper care that they need. We don't need a lot of information, just kind of the basics, name, date of birth, what hospital they would prefer to go to, any med allergies, and medical history as well. So it's a great program that we're hoping to kick off with assisted living facilities and the senior facilities within our service area. Any questions?
Council, any questions? I don't think so.
Should I be doing this?
I was going to say, is this for my own personal
Yeah,
needs?
thank you.
For my refrigerator?
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right.
It's got a magnet.
Well, Council, we'll call it a no-brainer resolution before us to accept this donation from the Lions Club. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution approving this gift from the Lions Club.
Second.
The motion is second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And I will extend my thanks, I think, for the second council meeting in a row to the Lions Club. I think they gave a donation to the police last council meeting. And we're grateful for your generosity and help supporting our first responders. Thank you again. All right.
Yes. So
Yeah, Chief,
everybody
go
can
ahead.
go back and have some treats now. Thank you for all being here.
Time for cake.
I'm about to feel less safe. Now we have the angry horde, citizens.
Just say that. Sure. With me? Yeah, oh, sure.
Sure.
Looking as though I have something I can do here. This part.
I don't want mine. Do you want yours?
Come on, Brianna. Can I do the rabbit ears behind you, Brianna?
Give my back to the chief. It has better use somewhere else.
Item 5C, the Fire Department biannual report. Chief?
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of council. Here for my biannual report. I'm going to go through some information as to 2024 and then look a little bit into this year as to what we have in score. All right, so for everybody that might be watching or in the audience, just a quick review. I always do this every presentation. So our department covers the city of White Bear Lake, White Bear Township, Delwood, Birchwood, Gem Lake, which is about 35 square miles, so it's a pretty large area. And the population served is 38,000 plus. That's kind of a rough estimate, plus that does not include any visitors or people traveling through the area. We currently have 18 full-time firefighter paramedics, and we just hired our first, at least in this version of the department, our first full-time firefighter EMT, Jeff Ekman, who many people know because he's been a long-time member of the department. He's been here over a decade, so we're pretty excited about that. He'll be starting with us at the end of the month. And we currently have 13 part-time firefighters, and then Brian Eichelberg is the gentleman that's been kind of standing near me. He left with the rest of the gang. He's my new assistant chief of training and operations, and so this is just day 2, so he doesn't have everything yet to be as formal as the rest of us. Our call volume, this is for the last 5 years, so this is what our call volume is looking like. We had a record high for the department in 2022 of 5283. Over the last couple of years, it's tapered off a little bit, which the crews are not complaining about because it was pretty hectic for a while. But nonetheless, it's slowing down a little bit. I can attribute some of this to the loss of some frequent flyers, and then also the number of times we're being called to assist outside of our city has gone down. It used to be about twice as what it is now. So that is a positive thing, and I'll get more into the numbers here shortly. So this will remain the same as last year. This hasn't changed. So about 28% of what we do is fire and rescue calls, 72% is what we do is medical calls. So we run a full advanced life support medical services, and that is the majority of what we do. So here's our EMS mutual aid, so our ambulance calls, if you will. So we've received help 62 times, and we've given help 200 times. So we're still not exactly balanced there, but that number has come down as far as given pretty significantly. Fire mutual aid, this was, I might regret saying this, but it was relatively a slow year for fires for us in our response area. We asked for help 16 times, and we helped out 46 times. So that our neighbors around us were unusually busy, and we were a little bit slower. This is usually within a few numbers of each other, so it's a little more balanced than that normally, but nonetheless, that's what it was. Our top 5 EMS calls, I just create a little pie chart there. So this again does not change from year to year. For the last number of years I can remember, this is always the same. So most common call, sick people. Next one is breathing problems, and then psychiatric problems, falls, and unconscious. And so every other category drops off pretty significantly after that. And part of that is just because of how they present. When the call taker at the communication center enters the information, they get basic info and then they send the call. So they drop into those 5 categories pretty well. I get a lot of thank yous all the time from the public, which I'm obviously proud of and pass on to the crews so that they're aware of that. This one stood out to me, so I thought it was worth putting up on the screen. This gentleman said, if it weren't for them, I would not be here today. That's a pretty profound statement. And so very proud of what they do. They work hard. They train hard. They do really, really good work. Some demographics that I kind of wanted to point out to everybody. So 64% of our patients are over the age of 60. And I think we all kind of understand the significance of that. It is estimated that the 65 plus age group is expected to double from 2024 to 2075. So that is going to have an impact on us as our communities across the state continue to age. In 2024, there were Minnesota fire deaths. There were 67 fire deaths overall, and 63% of them were 61 years or older. So of the 3 related deaths that have taken place since I've been chief, all of them fit into that category. And so there's some common themes across the state as to what's happening. And then the U.S. Fire Administration stated that anybody 65 and over to have 2.3 to over 3% times greater risk of dying in a fire. So there's a significant risk to our older population, not only, difficulties of aging and illness and disease, but also with fires. One of the positive things that we're doing, so we are going to start a new medication trial. Regions, our medical directors, are very supportive of us, and they asked us to do a drug trial. And so what this is acetaminophen. Also, most people know it as Tylenol. But this isn't like take a couple Tylenol and you hope you feel better. You usually take a couple 100 milligrams. This is a gram, so 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol. And the whole idea to this is an alternative pain control. So we have a lot of patients that might be in pain, but it doesn't seem like they're in really a lot of pain, but you don't really want to just let them be in pain, but we don't want to use too many narcotics. So the whole idea is to use this as pain control for patients to try to reduce the amount of use of narcotics. If they have severe pain, they'll still use their narcotics. But for those that are kind of in that middle to lower range, they're doing a lot of this in the hospital right now, and it's been very successful. And so the amount of people that have injuries or illness that start narcotics and then become addicted to them, the hope is to try and reduce that through this. We will be the only EMS agency in the state doing this at this time. So it's kind of a nice thing that they came to us and said, hey, we'd like you to try this out. And we said, you bet, well, we're in for that. So we'll start doing that at the end of this month and into early May. As far as community events go, we do a lot of them. We had 56 planned events last year, and I'm not going to read all of these, but you're all familiar with them. It's a lot of events. It's a lot of fun. We really enjoy interacting with the public. A lot of last-minute stuff for us, like, hey, can you be here? Hey, can you drive by? Hey, can you do this? And then just random things that we run into as we work within the community. I already talked about the Vial of Life, so I'm not going to reiterate that. We just started our new Citizens Fire Academy, so this was something the department did many years ago for quite a while, and we just reinvigorated that. And so we have a class of students going through right now, and we talk about the history of the department, tours of the facilities, the apparatus, like an insight in depth into what we do, strategies, tactics, laying hose lines, controlling fire, lots of different hands-on opportunities. So we're pretty excited to have that back and up and running again. We do a lot of ride-alongs. We have Regents doctors that ride with us. We have physicians assistants that ride with us. We have Century College students, a lot of EMT students. We're starting that this week, so I think we have 4 or 5 riding along this week. And then citizens that would like to ride with us, we offer that too. So it's been great to have people ride with us. One of the some of the students that come through the programs are then interested in our department and try to say, hey, I liked it there, I like what you do, I like the culture, all those things. So it works out pretty good. We've done a ton of training last year, community CPR classes. We helped out with CERT training. We have in-house advanced cardiac life support, so those of you that know Josh Cermak, Josh's been around for a long time, he does a great job. He is now a certified trainer, so we used to have to send people out all the time to do this training, and now he can do it in-house, saves us a lot of money. We also do hand TIVI, which is a pediatric emergency training in-house. We've hosted a bunch of different classes for different agencies, and we're actually doing Firefighter 1 and 2, Ramsey County Firefighter 1 and 2 training tonight at the South Station and on Thursday night, and then helped out with the Ramsey County SWAT team also. As far as interdepartment training, we helped do with the police department some CPR and AED training, and then how to deliver Narcan when it's appropriate and bleeding control. And that was a lot of fun to interact with everybody. And then last year we did all citywide fire safety, evacuation, severe weather, and medical emergency training. So we're helping everybody out whenever we can. We also take care of all the city's AEDs. There are 27 units that the city owns throughout different buildings. And we check them, maintain them. Same with the fire extinguishers and then different medical supplies. So one of the things that has become very prominent, we always get brush fires in the spring. But these are two pictures that have been taken within the last month. The picture on the right is of a fire in northern Shoreview that we helped out with, and you can see how large that fire is. These fires, because of the dry conditions, are burning hotter and faster than before, and they are quickly getting out of control. And that one of the reasons it's titled Wildland Urban Interface is because oftentimes with the suburbs and where we live, there's houses kind of here and there or developments here and there. And if we are faced with the wrong conditions and the wind's blowing the wrong direction, they can quickly get into structures. And we have not seen how rapidly they grow before this year. Last year was predicted to be like this, and then if you remember, it started raining and it never stopped for like a month. So it kind of went away pretty quickly. It's not happening this year, so we are seeing this. The other picture on the left was just last week on Tuesday, a week ago Tuesday, and this was behind the Audi dealership in Maplewood. And this is about a 40-acre fire, and you can see the flames there. The flames are about 30 to 5 feet high, wind-driven and snowing at the same time, by the way. And remember, it had snowed just 2 days prior to that. And so it gives you some idea what that's like. So we have the equipment to deal with this, but it is just something we're concerned about because it won't take much for it to get into a housing development under the wrong conditions. Another thing we're experiencing this year is we're going to be, there's a switch. We've had this National Fire Incident Reporting System, which has been around forever. Councilmember Engstrand, this is a system he worked on for 30 years. And they are now switching to what's called the National Emergency Response System, which is near us. Well, why is this important? Two things. One, we're going to have to do a lot of work to redo our records management system to make all this work, but also we're going to have real-time data that they'll collect and we can get feedback on all the time. And so it's going to be very beneficial, not only for us, but across the state and across the nation. And if the events start to happen, like happening out in LA or other big wildfires, they'll be able to see what's going on right away because of the call volume spike in an area, and they can start sending state and federal resources to those areas in a faster basis. So it's kind of neat that they're doing this. That's what I have for you tonight. Any questions of me?
Thank you, Chief. Council, any questions? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, we talked a little bit about the mutual aid calls, and particularly, so we didn't, as is traditional, we didn't call in aid as often as we were called out to provide aid, but the number of times that we've been called out has been decreasing from a high that we had 2-3 years ago. We had conversation about that. Can you give any insight into what's going on that's reducing that? Are other agencies better equipped? Are they having better years? It's like, how do we get a sense of what we're going to be called on as partners to our neighboring communities? And how should we think about that in terms of our staffing, in terms of the equipment that we need to keep ready to be able to respond, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So Mayor, Councilmember Edwards, a lot of that has to do with other services staffing, particularly the private services that we assist, and their staffing got better. It seems as though lately it might have taken another downturn because we're starting to go on more of them again. And so it's kind of that ebb and flow of how well people are staffed that we help out with. If you will, and that's what determines that. In terms of equipment, it hasn't been a significant enough drop yet to really change our operations as far as what we have. You know, I've been very diligent about keeping what we need and keeping it at that level. So it isn't, we would have to have a very significant drop off for me to come back and say we don't need that because I was very thoughtful in what we have and operationally what we need.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Chief, the acetaminophen change, I guess some explanation on that. We're first on the scene. We're helping. If there's a real problem in pain, they're at the hospital pretty quick. How much are we distributing narcotics? I guess that surprised me a little bit to think that we're distributing narcotics at any level to use a replacement.
Yes, so, St. John, so Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, the St. John's Hospital is relatively close to us, but any of the other hospitals are a bit of a drive. And if we're with the patient and it's not so critical that we have to pick them up and go right away, we spend not a long time, but a few minutes with them and so we can get these things kind of going, and then that medication starts to go in while we're traveling to the hospital. So we get it in sooner. The narcotics, I can't give you exactly the number of narcotics we give, but it's not uncommon even for chest pain patients or broken bones or those types of things that we give narcotics. So it isn't like a astronomical amount. It's just a different approach to try and curb the epidemic that we've all seen.
Thanks.
Council, any other questions for the chief? All right, chief, thank you again for the report.
Thank you very much.
All right, item 5D, Arbor Day proclamation. That falls to me. Whereas the city of White Bear Lake has historically been committed to maintaining the urban forests and city parks and throughout the city by adding to and replacing its valuable tree stock. Whereas the city annually confirms its commitment to the urban forest by promoting public awareness and forestry issues through tree planting projects, tree pruning and maintenance seminars, invasive species control projects, and other educational opportunities. Whereas the city is celebrating its 37th year of being a tree city as part of the Tree City USA program, which was founded in 1976 to celebrate towns and cities committed to growing their urban canopy, and has helped more than 3,500 communities across the country build out their urban forests. Whereas the city recognizes Arbor Day as an annual occasion during which the community pauses to recognize the importance of trees and their impact on our environment and daily lives, and encourages public awareness of urban forestry issues. Whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality and beauty of our community and park system. Whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas the mayor and city council desire to extend their support for and recognition of the importance of trees within our city. Now, therefore, I, Dan Lewis-Mitt, mayor of the city of White Bear Lake, do hereby proclaim May 15th, 2025 as Arbor Day in White Bear Lake, and with my fellow members of the city council, the park board, and city staff, do hereby call upon all White Bear Lake residents to participate in the annual Arbor Day observance. And with that, before I announce the next issue, which we know is on the agenda, no, that wasn't an awkward scheduling issue. I think the debate that we're going to have dovetails nicely into that. We're going to have a public conversation about 4 trees that are very, very important to many people. And regardless of which way the council ultimately decides on what we do with the parking lot, if, and I won't preordain it because I look forward to the discussion, if we end up cutting them down, that doesn't detract at all or make us an anti-tree city. There are lots of practical considerations that the council is going to take under advisement. So if nothing else, I think this is a testament to our commitment to trees in this city. And these 4 particular trees are important. We're going to talk about it. But regardless of that, we're going to continue to be a tree-loving city, and we'll support those efforts. And we look forward to this year's Arbor Day. So with that, item 6A, parking lot reconstruction at 5th Street and Banning Avenue. Mr. Coppy.
Mayor, members of the council, I'll go through a brief presentation, just kind of recap the last few meetings and where we're at in this project. So at our March 11th meeting, council ordered plans and specifications for 4 downtown parking lots to be reconstructed that were identified within the mobility and parking study recently completed late last year. Then following that meeting at its March 25th meeting, council made a motion to hold a public hearing to accept public comment regarding potential removal of 4 mature bur oak trees to allow for reconfiguration of the 5th Street and Banning Avenue lot. That would allow for the addition of approximately 15 parking stalls. So kind of rehashing the presentation that I gave at the last meeting, but focusing on Lot 2, which is the 5th Street and Banning lot. Again, full reconstruction, just due to the pavement condition and the curbing, drainage in the parking lot. Also looked at the mobility and parking study, recommended looking at as a potential location for adding additional parking stalls. So the lot we are talking about, again, showing up on the map, is at the corner of 5th and Banning, behind the hardware store. Currently has 67 parking stalls. You can see on the east side of the lot has a large grass area, and that's where 3 of the trees reside, the other one adjacent to the hardware store building. Under the proposed conditions that the mobility and parking study looked at, we could add approximately 15 additional stalls. The area shaded off in the red would be the grass area currently that would be removed along with the oak trees to allow for that reconfiguration additional parking stalls. Currently, staff is working on some additional layouts. This was one that was kind of conceptual, that was done at the kind of a very high level with the study. We have an engineering firm looking at multiple different options. We hope to have those available shortly, but looking to see if there's different configurations that provide any additional stalls or amenities to the parking lot. The trees that are in question, the 3 that are on the left side of the screen, those are the ones that are in the larger grass median area that would provide the majority of the additional parking stalls. We recently had with the EAC Commission, as well as city staff, had Rainbow Tree Care come out and take a look at the health of the trees. The 3 that are in the larger area are generally in good health. They had been budding quite well last year, and they believe they are alive, generally healthy. Obviously susceptible if, through construction or other diseases, pests, things like that. So something we would take care of. As the mayor had mentioned, all our trees, we care about our tree canopy and would watch those kind of things anyways. The tree on the shown on the right side is the one closest to the hardware store. That one, Rainbow Tree Care said, is generally in decline, as you can kind of see in the picture. And if you go out and visit the site, you can kind of see on the right hand of the photo, you can see kind of the dead, the branches dying off. They're pretty significant in size. They keep falling down, so definitely in decline. They can't give an estimate of how long it would last, but definitely in a state of decline. Likely, they said, likely due to the small size of the grass median area that one resides in, and has done so for quite some time. So just kind of rehash the project schedule. So again, at the March 11th meeting, council had ordered plans and specifications. I had mentioned in my presentation that we are reviewing preliminary layouts to see what the best option would be based on council direction, and see what we could add for parking if the trees were removed. And then based on those layouts, as well as any feedback tonight, potentially approve plans and specifications at our May 27th meeting. And then kind of skipping through some of the details, but moving to a construction of early August following the conclusion of Market Fest, and then to be completed by kind of freeze up, I'll call it. So that's the general project schedule. So tonight, based on council direction, recommend that you hold the public hearing and use that testimony during future project decision points.
Thank you, Mr. Coppy. I think at this time, we will hold the public hearing. I have 20 or so names on my list. So if I don't call your name, we'll work through the list first, and then if your name isn't called and you still want to speak, just please come up in an orderly fashion. We're gonna say 2 to 3 minutes, given the number that we have. Try and be as close as that as you can. I want to give everyone a chance to be heard on this. And I'm going to read addresses off and spare everyone totally butchering your various last names. So with that, we'll hear first from 2303 4th Street. And as you come up, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name and address again for the record, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mayor, council members, I'm Cheryl Bolstad. I live at 2303 4th Street. I've lived here for 30 years. I'm also a member of the Environmental Advisory Commission. There are a few of us here tonight. At the last council meeting, the question was posed, mature trees are cut every day. What is special about these trees? I'm going to tell you. In 2019, the city worked with a group of senior students from the University of Minnesota in the Environmental Science program. The students took cores from 2 of these bur oak trees and determined that they would now be about 150 years old. That means the trees were about 45 years old when the city was founded in 1921. An excerpt from the students' report reads, "We recommend keeping the bur oak trees within the parking lot due to their age and historic significance to the city. In the green space under the oak trees, we recommend adding educational signage to inform community members of the stormwater management techniques being used by the city to improve water quality. It is important that the residents of White Bear Lake recognize and appreciate this history of the bur oak trees." In 2021, the New York Times reviewed a book by Professor Doug Ptolemy from the University of Delaware called The Nature of Oaks, the Rich Ecology of Our Most Essential Native Trees. He states that oaks are long-lived trees that support more life forms than any other tree in North America and provide food and protection for birds, as well as countless insects and spiders and an enormous diversity of species. A large oak tree can consume about 100 gallons of water a day. And I wonder if the city has plans, if they remove the trees, how to mitigate all the water that will collect in the rainstorm below these trees. Oaks can live upwards of 300 years, so our trees have many decades left to live. If any of you were around in the late 90s, if you were here, you may recall that the city had the trees pruned, and they were vastly over-pruned to the point where even city staff wondered if they would leaf out the following spring. But they survived, and you can still see stumps up in the tree canopy. If you're wondering the trees don't have a nice round canopy, that's because they were overly pruned in the 1990s. We want to note with appreciation that the designers of the current parking lot left intact a sufficient green space around the 3 central trees to promote healthy roots and water infiltration. We hope that the city will not only preserve the trees, but also the green space around the trees to prevent damaging the tree roots. We are aware that your concern is sufficient parking in the downtown area. The downtown parking mobility study concludes that we have a perception of a parking problem. We currently have a sufficient amount of parking if folks are willing to walk a block or 2 to their destination. The report shows that the downtown core on the east side of Highway 61 currently has 862 parking stalls. If all of the proposed changes are made, but we keep the oak trees, page 53 of the report shows we would lose 10 parking stalls, which is only 1% of total parking stalls. We know the council would prefer net zero loss of parking stalls, but 1% is pretty close to zero, and it seems a small price to pay for preserving these trees. Let's not make the short-sighted option of removing these trees, these important trees, to achieve a questionable goal of not losing 1% of our parking stalls. Lastly, seeing as the city has tagged over 2,000 ash trees for removal, and as a tree city, we should be preserving every healthy, mature tree possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the next name. It's not that I don't appreciate the passion, but it just adds more time, and I want to get through everybody. So if you could please hold your applause, including if someone comes up and wants to cut them down and you support that, regardless of who they say. If we could do that, that would be great. Thank you. All right, 4887 Stewart Avenue.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Ann Frisch, 4887 Stewart Avenue. I have lived here for 16 years in Ward 2. I'm here to speak for the downtown White Bear Lake trees. I'm very disappointed that the parking renovation included the destruction of these downtown trees. I beg you to be their protectors. They are part of our community. They remind us of our better selves. They fill us with joy. They're right now giving space in their branches for nesting birds, bees, other insects that even in very aging trees that seem to have no life, they have plenty of life. Please do everything you can to protect these trees. They are all we have. They cannot be replaced. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 1409 John Quill Lane. That's okay.
Hello, my name's Linda Henry, and I'm at 1409 Jonquil Lane. I was born and raised in White Bear Lake, and I came back after 20 years of wandering around and raised my children here. So I've been here for about 2/3 of my life. And I didn't come back here because I love the pavement and I love the parking lots. I came here because I love the community and I love the joy of the trees and the love and respect for nature. Cutting down these trees, and I'm advocating in particular for those 3 healthy trees. We can't undo it. Once they're down, and the pavement is laid and it's done. Our tree canopy in White Bear Lake, and this is according to the U.S. Forest Service, has an economic benefit of $1,042,000 every year. That's the entire White Bear canopy. $500,000 of that is in carbon dioxide uptake, and $216,000 is in stormwater mitigation. And I think the environmental study discussed the priority of the shade tree planting, the priority of keeping our shade trees. And if you saw that picture, that canopy does provide shade. And those trees are 150 years old. Bur oaks can grow to be 200 to 300 years old, or even 400 years old. So they're middle-aged. They're younger than I am. In 2075, 50 years from now, will we want our children to be grateful for a couple of extra parking spaces, or are we going to be hoping that they're taking their children to see these trees? We don't even know what the transportation is going to be like in 50 years when these trees are still standing, if they stay healthy. We may not be using parking lots as much. We likely won't be. And what is the hurry? I heard somebody quoted as saying, we've been having this conversation for a long time, we need to move on. No, I don't think that that is the way we should be looking at it. Whose priority is it to get rid of these trees in this town that so cherishes trees, apparently? And what is the incentive for getting rid of these trees? And how does that balance out? And I think most important to me is, what is our legacy? Do we want to be able to take our children to a plaque on a parking lot stall and say, I did this? Or do we want to preserve those trees for future generations? And so that we can breathe, because trees help us breathe and stay healthy. And I just really call on all of you to please consider saving these trees. Thank you.
Thank you. 4292 Oakmead.
Ralph Tillman, 4294 Oakmead Lane. Please reconsider removing the oak trees in the parking lot at 5th and Banning. I observed the lot at 3:30 p.m. this afternoon. I went over there and looked at the lot and looked at the number of cars in the lot. There was parking available. Then I went out on Banning Avenue and looked at the street. On the west side of Banning Avenue, next to this parking lot, there wasn't a single car parked on the street, not one. It appears a loss of these trees won't serve a very big parking purpose, at least not when I saw it. It will decrease the unique qualities of downtown White Bear Lake. As you know, trees clear carbon dioxide from the air and produce oxygen. What person wants to remove this from our neighborhood? Trees are decreasing in White Bear to count insects and disease. Trees are removed around strip malls just so people can see the buildings. They are gone from, more are gone from development. April 22nd is Earth Day, and the 25th is Arbor Day. Is White Bear Lake going to celebrate this by cutting down century-old trees? And for what? A parking lot? Let's tie yellow ribbons on these trees and keep them. Protect trees and provide for our future. And one other thing I want to mention is if somebody has a big penchant to swing a chainsaw, there's plenty of buckthorn out there.
Thank you. 59, could be 5414. Ebba. That.
Thank you for letting me have time. I'll make it really quick. Some of you received an email I sent because
Can you state your name and address for the
I'm sorry, Beth Artner. I'm at 5414 East Bald Eagle Boulevard. I live in the township. I hope you don't mind. But I've lived here for almost 50 years. And I do love downtown. And what I did do is I wanted to find out, is there something we could do to fix this? And it turns out we've got a lot of parking that's never used. I went over to the bank. The whole parking lot on the east side of the bank is generally unused. You've got lots of space in the library. There was tons of space at CVS. And I was wondering if you could actually work out a deal, because I talked to some of the merchants, and they said one of the biggest issues they had was other merchants' employees were parking in these prime spots, and they used to like it when you had traffic enforcement coming around chalking tires and writing tickets. And I was surprised that they actually said that. So anyways, I would like to speak up for the trees, and I think we have opportunities just for the 15 spaces. We don't need them because, like Ralph and some of the other people, have come down during busy times to see if there's parking issues. And there really isn't. I mean, you can always find a spot except at Market Fest. But, could we talk to the bank? Because they've got signs up that say that you'll be towed. Why? There's nobody there. Same with CVS. I mean, it's like the UPS guy, he pulls up he crosses 5 spots. So there's plenty of other parking, and I hope you would reconsider that, and maybe we could make arrangements with some of the merchants. But those are my suggestions, and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. 5294 Bald Eagle Ave East.
Mayor and council members, my name is Tim David, 5294 Bald Eagle Boulevard East. And yes, well, I live literally on the other side of the tracks in White Bear Township. I have been shopping in downtown White Bear Lake for about 55 plus years. And I support saving the large oak trees in the parking lot near Ace Hardware. As a note, I led the group that stopped the Met Council from bringing 178 buses into our downtown every business day. And I mention that because one of the biggest messages was we did not want the Met Council to damage the historic small town feel of our downtown White Bear Lake. These large oaks are part of that historic small town feel. These oaks, Quercus macrocarpus, are known as heritage trees. As everybody has mentioned, I also estimate they are 150 years old, and this species has a typical lifespan of up to 250 years. Because of their size, their age, their importance to our community, these trees are part of the heritage of our community. The tree canopy they provide is important to our historic small town feel. And there are very few of these heritage trees left in our downtown area. And in case folks think this is just an esoteric, intangible points that people are talking about, here are some tangibles. The Arbor Foundation has what they call a tree benefit calculator. And this calculator was created by Davey Tree. So Davey Tree is one of the largest tree removal companies in the country, and they recognize the tangible value of a tree. A bur oak with a diameter of 24 inches over a 1-year period will retain 3,267 gallons of stormwater runoff. It will conserve 296 kilowatt hours of electricity that would be needed for cooling or heating. It will remove 1,252 pounds of carbon from the atmosphere, among other tangible benefits. With that said, I also want to note that directly across the street from this lot, there exists 61 parking spots, of which approximately 30 are always open and unused during any given business day. directly across the street on the north side of that parking lot. Early in this process, I know it was stated that the city did not have a parking problem. It is really a problem of how parking is being used, who is using it, and how it can be better managed. To think that the city, I apologize, but can't be more creative in finding a solution than cutting down these oaks would be embarrassing for Tree City USA. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. 2329 5th Street, rather.
My name's Matt Keekley, 2329 5th Street, 5th and Johnson, pretty much, for if you don't know that. First of all, I'd like to thank this council, and especially thanks to Councilmember West for creating this opportunity for this open forum. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the trees. I'm quite frankly appalled that removing 450-year-old trees to gain 15 parking spaces is even being considered. These mature trees are part of the beauty and charm of this community and the downtown area. The city's Environmental Advisory Commission has sent the council 2 letters regarding both the trees' benefits and that commission's concern regarding their removal. This is an environmental issue, and that commission's opinions needs to be strongly respected and considered. Mayor, you have stated that you support taking the trees down and are confident that they will be replaced with smaller trees in other areas of the community. It would take 150 years to replace these trees, and your confidence gives me no comfort. Placing new trees in other areas does not replace the beauty of these trees, nor does it enhance the small town character of our downtown area. Trees filter the air we breathe, and nowhere is this needed more than in downtown areas. I often use the lot in question, and I've rarely needed to divert to on-street parking. When I did, street parking was always available. I've made a point the last couple of weeks of driving past this lot every day of the week at various times of day, and always there were vacant parking spaces. Please, save the trees.
Thank you. 4345 Whitaker Court.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and fellow citizens. My name is Sherry Smith. I'm a 32-year resident of White Bear Lake and an accidental activist, a passionate environmental activist. I'm a founding board member of the Neighborhood Concerned Citizens Group who stood up to an extremely bad corporate neighbor, a company who polluted the air, water, and soil in the White Bear Lake area for decades. That company ultimately declared bankruptcy, was sold to an affiliate of a private investment firm, and we now sincerely hope the issue of out-of-bounds pollution in our area is forever behind us. As part of court-ordered reparations for the environmental damage suffered by our community, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency ordered the responsible company to plant hundreds of new trees in the White Bear Lake area. Hundreds of new trees. A strong and simple reason a strong and simple lesson that I learned as part of the Neighborhood Concerned Citizens Group has been this. It's incumbent upon all of us to speak up and loudly if something is wrong. I am so proud to be one of the citizens in our area who stood up and spoke loudly. So very proud of the difference we made in White Bear Lake and in the entire state of Minnesota, as together we successfully drew necessary attention to the unacceptable situation and then later passed the first TCE ban in the United States. Tonight, I have to speak again to register my objections to the planned removal of these beautiful, mature, and healthy trees as part of the downtown parking lot projects. I'm not a scientist, but I understand and value the expert opinions of those who are. Did you know? All right, I wasn't going to keep this in because everybody else has already said these things, and I didn't know they were going to, but maybe redundancy is important in this case. I did not know that the Arbor Day Foundation says that in 1 year, a single mature tree can actually absorb over 48 pounds of carbon dioxide while concurrently releasing oxygen. I didn't know that. And I did know that plants and trees improve the air we breathe, but I didn't know those compelling and impressive statistics. I just knew I've always thought trees are beautiful and at times kind of miraculous. From my non-science perspective, trees provide beauty, provide habitats for birds and other wildlife, encourage and protect plant growth, provide energy, an energy break through cooling shade in the summer and helping to keep structures a bit warmer in the winter through natural windbreak. Any realtor will tell you that mature trees increase home values, and I would absolutely suggest tonight trees increase the value in our community just as the lakes do. I recognize how fortunate we are to have, fortunate and rare it is for us to have a thriving downtown area, and I know that the issue before the council is in no way comparable to what happened with Water Gremlin. With those acknowledgments, I believe there must be another solution to improving the parking problem, a solution that does not include the removal of perfectly healthy trees, trees that provide so much good by enriching health and the beauty in our environment, a charming, healthy environment that has drawn all of us to this city where we proudly call home. I'm respectfully asking the council to let the trees stand. Find a different solution and to add parking without destroying these trees that have been standing long before I was born and will stand long after I'm gone if you make the right decision to keep these healthy, beautiful trees a vibrant part of our natural beauty. Thank you.
Thank you. 2291 4th Street.
Thanks for listening to us. I have shortened my speech because my fellow residents are very well spoken. I am Karina Morse. I live at 2291 4th Street, and I've lived in the White Bear Lake area for 30 years. The preservation of these oak trees should take precedence over short-term development plans that have negative impacts to our town and environment. I live in and go visit small towns because of the beautiful walking opportunities and the scenery around me. I don't think we need to create 15 more spots for people. They need to walk around. That's why we go to cute towns like White Bear Lake. People, thank you. I just want to thank you. I shortened this. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope the council will take this opportunity to demonstrate leadership in preserving our environment for our future generations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. 4984 Stewart Ave.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Lori Hughes, 4984 Stewart. I'll be brief. The parking mobility study that the city did recently several times states that there is no parking shortage. There is a perception of a parking problem. There isn't an actual parking problem. So why would we spend money to reconfigure this parking lot, and why would we cut trees to fix a problem that doesn't exist? I would much rather see the city keep the trees and spend money on some signage to communicate with people who are visiting that they can park on city streets, that they can park like going further into the neighborhoods. There's always plenty of parking on neighborhood streets. I would really appreciate it if the city council could keep the trees, protect them, protect the green space that they're in so that we don't have any construction damage to them when the parking lot gets resurfaced. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, 2410 Hillside Road.
My name is Gary Schreier. Thanks to the mayor and council members for letting us speak tonight. I live at 2410 Hillside Road in south of here. Lived in White Bear Lake for over 40 years. And I'm also a member of the White Bear Lakes Environmental Advisory Commission. Thanks for holding this hearing together, input on the public concerns with the oak trees, and as stated by previous speakers, there have been numerous reasons for not removing the oak trees. I have a few additional comments. First, my understanding is that parking lot where the oak trees are located was constructed about 40 or 50 years ago. The architect who designed it told me personally he designed it with the intent of keeping the trees. At that time, the trees were valued by the city, and that doesn't seem to be the case right now. Second, keeping the lake clean is important. Stormwater treatment by installing rain gardens and other infiltration designs help improve the water quality of White Bear Lake. For example, we have installed these water quality improvements like rain gardens and so on in neighborhoods around downtown, by the boatworks, along South Shore Boulevard. Unfortunately, the downtown area has few areas where rainwater can soak into the ground instead of flowing into storm drains. Removing the trees is only going to make things worse, and putting up impervious surfaces there. Additionally, has the city considered implementing stormwater treatment in the designs of the parking lots and streets to mitigate the direct discharge of stormwater into the lake? Just another comment on the whole parking lot thing. Finally, has the city considered other options for addressing parking issues such as a 2-hour time limit on weekends or requiring employees not to occupy prime stalls near the nearest businesses, or even maybe parking meters could be discussed. Anyway, thank you for your time, and for those folks who are interested in cutting buckthorn, we have an event in the fall. And we certainly would like you to help us down in Lakewood Hills. We cut up about 100 yards of buckthorn, and we've got plenty more to cut. So please help us out. Thanks.
Thank you. Uh, 5210, what does that say? 5210 Beaver Street. I didn't know we had a Beaver Street, but this one I can pronounce. Suzanne Ryan. Struck out twice, name and address. All right, we're going to keep moving on. If that person wants to speak after, please do. 3756 Auger Ave.
Mayor, members of council, my name is Bonnie Greenleaf, and I live at 3756 Auger Avenue. I'm also a member of the Environmental Advisory Commission. I don't believe this has to be an all or nothing situation, meaning we have to cut down all the trees or we're going to lose parking spaces. And so I truly believe that there's room for refinements. And I was going to ask that we direct the consultant to look at other alternatives, but I was thrilled to hear that they're already looking at alternatives. And so hopefully they can spare the bur oaks and maximize the parking spaces. The university students a few years ago measured the trees to be a total of 129 caliper inches. And so it would take a massive amount of 1 or 2 inch saplings to replace that amount of tree. They're huge trees. I also had a list of, in general, the benefits of urban trees, but a lot of it has already been mentioned, so I'll just leave it with this one.
urban trees aid businesses. Marketing studies consistently show businesses on treescape streets show higher income streams, that residents will drive farther and linger longer in business districts with large shade trees, particularly in summer and on hot days. Thank you.
4533 Oak Leaf Drive.
Hello, my name is Andrea Morozic. I live at 4533 Oakleaf Drive in Vadnais. I'm from Vadnais, but I love your downtown. For the past few years, I've visited downtown White Bear about 2 times a week. I've never had a problem finding a parking spot, no matter day of the week, time of day, including in this exact parking lot. When I told my kids why I was heading out tonight, they had some really big feelings. It was so black and white to them, and it made me think about a sentiment that I've heard, which is to live in a way that makes your 8-year-old self and your 88-year-old self proud. So please, for 20 seconds, indulge me and close your eyes or think in your mind's eye of yourself as an 8-year-old, playing in the grass, playing under trees, just being an 8-year-old. Now, how would that child feel if they learned that you grew up to be someone who would cut down these century-old but still young and healthy trees? Please bear with me again and imagine yourself at 88, looking back on your life. What is the legacy that you want to have left behind? Thank you.
Thank you. 2128 Birch Street.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Luxford. I live at 2128 Birch Street. I'm also a member of the Environmental Advisory Commission and occasionally, very infrequently, a letter to the editor, writer, submitter to the White Bear Press. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I don't know individually any of you. I don't know how you feel on this particular issue, but it is important to a large number of people. Considering the SEH Downtown Mobility Parking Report, it was found that both the ACE lot and the on-street parking north and east of the said lot were below capacity, defined as 93% spots occupied during the parking census. SEH recommended safety improvements, including curb extensions or bump outs at a dozen points that would cause the loss of 11 on-street parking spots, which is a large reason why we're having this conversation. I would like to point out that 5 of those spaces would be lost further away from the downtown commercial core than the ACE parking lot. So in an area that is already underutilized, you're trying to compensate by adding more spaces for even further out parking spots that would be lost. So I would ask that they not be considered as spaces lost in the sense that you would need to balance them with gains elsewhere. Further, the bump outs, I do not feel that they are particularly necessary along Banning, where there are stop signs every single block, parking on both sides of the street, and traffic is already moving at a slow rate. I would instead like to see crosswalks be made more visible, stylized, perhaps white bears across instead of just boring white rectangles. I'd like to take a moment to speak for the 4th tree, the loner out in the distance. It's been mentioned both by Rainbow, the gentleman that came out to look at them, and in other places that it is in a state of decline. We live in a day and age where you can go to Google Maps and look back at a picture from 2013 and see that it is visually quite similar to its state today, 12 years. I don't think that it is declining at any appreciable rapid rate, and I would encourage you to consider not automatically getting rid of that one. I would ask that all 4 of them be maintained, and in the future, I would like to see this upcoming construction activity turn into a positive thing, where the city could establish a micro park around these 3 trees. Remove the turf grass and instead plant something that doesn't require mowing, so Andy and his crew don't have to worry about coming out to a parking lot and trimming grass. The green space could be an anchor to the north end of downtown, the east side of Highway 61, giving people a place to meet, sit, and relax in a bit of green space. It would allow the opportunity to add some native plantings, some pollinator-friendly plants, and create an oasis on the north end, perhaps leading to people parking further north and using these underutilized spaces while also visiting downtown and doing their shopping. Would like to say thank you again for letting us have this conversation. Thank you for everyone else showing up, whether it's for homework or for just wanting to come out and rattle a cage. Thank you.
4722 Wood Avenue.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for your service, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight, and thank you for listening. My name is Rolf Flomberg-Dvor, and I live at 4722 Wood Avenue with my wife and 2 kids. I'm here to speak on behalf of the trees and also on behalf of my children who are 14 and 10 and off at fun activities. I ask you tonight to please not cut them down. These magnificent oaks are not only extraordinarily beautiful, but they give character and a sense of maturity and a sense of belonging to the community, to all of us. They offer shade, vibrant colors, and life-giving air. Many of these things everyone already said, but we are stewards of these majestic wonders, and it would be a shame to cut them down for any reason, especially for a few parking spaces. What a loss that would be to the whole community. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at those old oaks and felt a profound sense of gratitude as I drive by or walk by. I just ask that you'd please keep them around. The trees are obviously loved by many, including my kids and their friends, my wife and I, my in-laws, and many of my neighbors. They're priceless. We are their stewards. Let's preserve them for the next generations. Thank you.
Thank you. 1652 9th Street.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Ryan Limbag at 1652 9th Street, right by Podman Park. My son has been a part of the White Bear Lake school system for many years now, having gone to Lincoln from kindergarten to 5th grade, and is currently a 6th grader at Central Middle School. White Bear Lake's most impressive and endearing quality and its biggest strength is its sense of community. These century trees are part and have always been part of the community. I moved here from Woodbury, and Woodbury has a lot of parking spots. God bless Woodbury, but it doesn't hold a candle to White Bear Lake's unique sense of community. Everyone here has brought up so many great points, so I'm just gonna kind of cut this down a little bit. To speak to the sense of community, I've been a visitor at the Environmental Advisory Commission for the past couple months, and their welcoming with me and their engagement with me is just a testament to our sense of community. With a lot of environmental issues like reducing straws or reducing plastic bags, they're great practices, but I feel like they put a lot of the burden on the individual, kind of absolve like corporate entities from their responsibility. But that is not the case here. We can make a choice to not take down the trees. So I hope we just keep that in mind and just understand that they are part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. 3633 Rolling View Drive.
3633 Rolling View Drive. I'm Zoe Anderson. I've lived here all of my 17 years, which admittedly isn't as impressive as some of you guys, but I know that the council has said that if they do unfortunately cut down these trees, they will plant new trees, but I just want to say a little bit about why that isn't really a solution. It takes 75 years for new oak trees when they're planted to mature. It'll be 2100 before those trees mature. I will, with luck, be 92 years old, and unfortunately, all of you guys will be long gone.
Thank you for the unfortunately part.
It will take 75 years. It'll take 75 years to undo the mistake of cutting down those trees for only 15 parking spots. Everybody who's spoken tonight has said a lot of amazing things, so I'll try and be brief. But I think that everybody on the council should understand that the impacts this decision will have will not just impact your life, but our future generations, our kids and our grandkids. I do not think that in another 100 years, my grandkids or great-grandkids will cherish a parking spot. I do not think that in 100 years, these parking spots will matter. I don't think they'll remember the time that we had 15 more parking spots. But those trees matter now. You can see by how many people turned out to protect them. And in 100 years, my grandkids or great-grandkids will cherish these trees that have watched our town and our nation grow. I don't think they'll cherish concrete. Please consider this when making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the last name on my list is 4292 Greenhaven Court.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I'm Jan Uslick, and I live at 4292 Greenhaven Court in Badness Heights. I've been there for 38 years. I use that parking lot a lot. I love the quilt store. I'm there frequently, but I also enjoy the other shops along that street. And I rarely have ever had a hard time finding a spot in that lot. And that's at various times of the day, various days of the week. There was even a Christmas event going on downtown, and the streets were parked full of cars, and I could still get into that parking lot. So I really question the real need of 15 more spots. The one time I had a little trouble finding was for farmer's market. And then I just parked a little further away on the street, and that's open, 4 hours? 8 to noon, and those open up really quickly when people get their produce and they leave. So I really wonder why the need for this. And we hear all about climate change, and carbon dioxide is a factor in climate change. And these trees take the carbon out of the air, as they've said, and give us oxygen. They also absorb heat on a hot summer day, and their canopy covers that asphalt parking lot and the cars parked in there, which reduces the amount of heat that's radiated back out into the atmosphere. So it's just, it's hard to believe that those beautiful trees would be at risk for being removed for parking. It's either you really believe in wanting to do something for the environment, because they're doing something right in that little area for the environment. And so I thank you for this.
Thank you. Those are all the names on my list, but anyone else who'd like to speak, I saw Ann go, please come on up.
I'm Suzanne Ryan from White Bear Township, and I am originally from Texas, and what we have here is trees that grow big. In Texas, we did not have big trees, but of course I love the trees, and I was a tree hugger at one time when they were expanding the interstate highway and tried to stop the building. It did no good, but here you honor all the people in this room that have spoken to save these trees. And so I value this community because you value us. But also, I just came back from North Carolina where they've got thousands and thousands of trees, but they don't get very big in diameter like these do. So I think we have a valuable resource in our trees because they do get big. And I think that is worth saving. And also I would just like to say that these trees add oxygen to the air. And I heard one person mention that, but they take the carbon dioxide out of the air, which would be harmful for us to breathe, and give back oxygen, which we do need to breathe. So I think we should save them, honestly. And I moved here to White Bear Lake from Texas because I love downtown. And I love this whole community and this atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Ellen Gorola, 1548 5th Street, also a member of the White Bear Lake Environmental Advisory Commission. You've heard from a few of us, so I don't need to repeat, but I would like to say something I love about White Bear. My family and I moved here because I love this small town feel, and I also love the outdoors. And I grew up in Ridgefield, Minnesota. A lot of characteristics to that small town feel, but when I go back and visit there, they've done a lot of changes, a lot of parking lots, a lot of nature parks torn down. It's not the same Ridgefield I remember. So I have my kids here past bedtime, and I know many of you have children, and something to consider is Christian and Julian and your decision that I hope years from now when they come back and are grown and visit me, they'll have those same characteristics. We walk often from the library all the way to the CVS. There's not much shade on that route, and those trees are important and do provide that for a lot of young families. And just the same beauty of downtown that a lot have expressed, and I want them to remember it that way. So hope you'll take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Time for bed.
We live at 4617 Shady Lane. You want to
save the trees?
Please?
Please.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I'm sorry for the disturbance of bringing a child into the meeting. But yeah, thank you for your consideration. It takes an oak 20 to 40 years before its acorns are produced, before it's at reproduction age. So oaks in particular are a slow-growing species and an asset to our community. And we've lived here about 4 years. And one of the reasons we love it here are the big...
We live in Minneapolis.
The trees. So thanks very, very much.
Very good. Thank you. Would anyone else like to say a few words, please?
Good evening. I'm Jan Chamberlain. I live at 22878 8th Street. I've lived there for over 30 years. I know you have a difficult decision. I do not want your job at all. You have to make lots of people happy. I know that's difficult. Everyone so far tonight has spoken in favor of the trees. They've all said what I have here. So many of us in this community think alike, but there are different views, and I acknowledge that. Please, just remember the trees. As they say, they're over 100 years old. If they're taken down, they're gone. They will not be back. We will not see anything that is planted to replace them achieve their magnificence in most of our lifetimes. I was going to say in any of ours here tonight, but there's some young ones who might, which is nice. I live in a 100-year-old house. If I'm going to downtown, 99% of the time it's to go to Ace to get something I need to fix my house. I have never had a problem finding a parking spot in the Ace lot. I'm not sure more spaces there are needed. Somewhere else in downtown, possibly, but not there. Please, again, consider saving the trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Hello, Mark Helseth. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I thought I should. Mark Helseth at 5223 Lakeview Avenue in White Bear Township. Everybody else, probably smarter than me, already gave all the practical and environmental reasons for keeping trees. I think they're hard to argue. But really, I think the trees are what really drives, in a lot of ways, drives traffic to downtown and maybe creating that problem with our parking, right? I mean, why do we take them down if people who I know for sure who come and visit me and my family, they just rave about this downtown area, and I've been here 26 years and show it off as much as I can. And I just feel that it is important that we keep trees that have been around that long. I think they do draw traffic to downtown, and it would be a shame to remove them. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, 1849 Whitaker Street, Paul Moss. Thanks very much to the mayor and council for inviting people. It's hard not to be super touched by everything that people have said today. It's really, really amazing. I guess the only thing I would add is when you're looking in the future and you're trying to plan for parking downtown, just consider the fact that these businesses that look healthy and maybe are vibrant today may not be there tomorrow. You know, CVS has been closing a lot of stores throughout the country. You know, I don't know what the situation is with Ace or with a lot of the other businesses downtown, but don't necessarily just straight line the future based on what you see right now, because we very well may not need a lot more parking spaces in the future like some of the other people have said. So I think it's really important that we keep these trees there and respect them as elders in our community. And again, I'm just so touched with what everyone said, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
My name is Cleen O'Brien. I'm actually from Vadnais Heights, but I grew up in White Bear Lake, and I'm currently one of the school nurses for our school district. I am a public school nurse and also I'm a public health nurse, and there are numerous benefits to green spaces and trees specifically for public health, so I just want to make sure that that's well known. And then in this beautiful room that displays beautiful trees behind you, keeping that in mind, I also want, like, I have teenagers, and they're always talking about the vibe, right? The vibe of the place. And the vibe of White Bear Lake is these beautiful, large, mature trees. We have them in our parks. And I go to the 4th of July fireworks every 4th of July over at the beach. I have never had a problem parking, even in the craziest of times, even during Market Fest. And I realize that doesn't necessarily deal with this parking lot in particular, but I have always had no problems finding parking. But what I would say about the vibe of the place, trees are the vibe of White Bear Lake. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm glad they're not here. I'm glad my kids aren't here to see this. But also, you know, if you do cut down these trees and then we have all these extra parking spots, we lose all that shade, all those benefits that people have been talking about. But we also, oh my gosh, I totally forgot what I was going to say. So we have, I don't know if it's like a scarcity. Like, sure, we have all this open space now with all these excessive parking spaces, but then everybody's going to be like, well, why are we even down to White Bear Lake? The trees are gone, and like nobody's here because there's all these open spaces, you know? So I love downtown White Bear. I moved back here from living elsewhere, and part of the reason is because of the vibe. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this issue?
Mayor and Council, Mark Ryan, 4701 Wood Avenue. As you know, I'm always in agreement with everything that comes up here. But I will say this, those trees need to stay. They really do. There's no, I haven't heard anybody from the merchants or the downtown White Bear people saying we have to get rid of them, we need the spaces. Nobody here tonight said that we need to get rid of them. Please save them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, any final thoughts, please?
My name is Dave Ryan. I kind of have to speak because that was my brother, and if I don't speak, he'll hold that against me. And I don't know the Susanna Ryan, but we're not connected. I grew up in White Bear Lake. These are just some comments that I'd like to add. I grew up in White Bear. An aerial view of the downtown area shows three really desirable elements: the lake, the historic downtown, and the canopy of trees downtown and in the surrounding neighborhood. It's a very Norman Rockwell type of town. The fourth tree was described as generally in decline. The same could be said of me. So I'd like to advocate for that tree as well as the other three. It's also approximately 150 years old. It's had a tougher go of it location-wise. It's deserving to be spared. A no-brainer is a term mentioned a few times. Based on the public input, this seems like a no-brainer. The 5 members on the council represent all of us here tonight. It's overwhelmingly in support of leaving the trees. I don't see this as a tough decision. Lorna Hubman chained herself to the trees when they built White Bear Parkway connecting to Otter Lake Road and 9th Street. Anybody remember that? We are less physically passionate in our protest, but just as committed. The Cottonwoods in Mataska Park, the trees in Railroad Park along Lake Avenue, they all add to the quality of life we ask to protect. Thank you for hearing all the quality speakers' comments. There has not been one speaker in favor of cutting the trees. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Any final comments before I close the public hearing? All right, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. As is customary, I'm going to get things kicked off. I'll note that I've received a lot of emails on this, and some of you spoke here in addition to emails that I've received. But to those that did send an email that didn't get a reply, I did read them all. There were just a lot. So I do thank those that sent emails and everyone who showed up here today to speak to this issue. There's obviously a lot of passion among the community, and that's a good thing. I also want to extend a special thank you to the Environmental Advisory Commission. Those are volunteer boards, often thankless jobs, and sometimes we're in agreement as a council with the commission, sometimes we're not, whether it's the Advisory Commission or Park Commission, but we do recognize that you put a lot of hard work and time into these issues, and you did send the council 2 letters, and we did read them. I've got about 3 or 4 kind of section comments, and then I'll conclude with where I've come down on this one. So first off, parking is an issue downtown. It's a question of how big of an issue is it? Is it at crisis? I don't think so. Those that say I've never failed to find a spot, I don't think you're lying, but I've failed to find a spot in that lot several times. Is it during the peak times on Friday and Saturday? Sure. It's not all day, every day. That's just the ebbs and flows of the downtown area. So that really is sort of the genesis behind why I think the steering committee landed on a recommendation. And we'll pause there and side note. The steering committee, who did recommend this and did put forth a proposal, is represented by a large cross-section of the community. It's some business owners, it's some residents, it's the Historical Society, it's the Arts District. So that is, a lot of different views and opinions that did come to that conclusion. So I think we need to have some deference for that. And there was someone who said this is so black and white for them. I think they're referring to their kids, meaning we ought to keep it. I disagree. I don't think it's any more black and white to keep them as it is black and white to cut them down. There's a lot of back and forth, and that's what the council's job is. I don't think cutting the trees down is going to ruin the environment any more than adding or not having 15 additional parking spots is going to ruin business in downtown White Bear. I do appreciate the passion, but I want to kind of narrow the focus because as far as the environmental concerns, I can appreciate what 4 Trees does for the environment, for cleaning up the air, for stormwater control. What's before the dais right now isn't clear cutting a forest for development. It's 4 trees. They're important trees. They mean a lot to the community. But I think the insinuation that somehow the council's anti-trees or wants to destroy the environment, I think the fact that we're having a public hearing like this over 4 trees speaks to how rare and how infrequent the idea of cutting down large, mature oak trees is. I also think some of the comments that cars aren't going anywhere, I'm going to have to disagree. Mr. David and I partner pretty well on stopping a bus line because we didn't want mass transportation because it would kill the community vibe, as one person said. But people got to get here somehow, and they're going to have to drive then because we don't have public transportation. I also think that there are some practical considerations that haven't been fully fleshed out. And by that, I mean the engineering considerations we are going to reconstruct a lot somehow, even if we keep the trees, and digging up the old pavement, we're going to hit roots that potentially makes the trees vulnerable. I will note to some of the stormwater comments, yes, stormwater runoff is a problem there because many, many years ago, there wasn't proper storm drainage put in, and that's one of the things that we hope to solve. And in order to do that, you need to dig deep. And when you dig, you're going to encounter roots. So I look at, yes, there's practical reasons to solve for parking. I think the reason we didn't hear from any business owners, in fairness, is because this is a polarizing issue. And on a totally separate topic that I don't even want to get into, there's a business being boycotted downtown White Bear because they expressed certain opinions that were polarizing. So I don't blame any business owners for not wanting to show up. Some have contacted me, and they've expressed concerns about parking, and they haven't been too bent out of shape saying if we don't do this, it's a crisis, but they've at least expressed concern that parking is and continues to be an issue, and they want to run a business and allow people to get there. So having said all that, because I'm on record at the last council meeting and certainly at a work session saying I support cutting down the trees because I think this is a practical solution to help solve a parking issue. There's one last thing that I've grappled with through the emails and listening to folks testify here today, and that is how much these trees mean to people, not to save the planet from an environmental standpoint, not because they, think everybody should get rid of cars. It's the vibe, it's the small town feel, it's the charm of the city. And that is what means the most to me in terms of what testimony is pretty darn compelling. I ran a campaign on preserve the history, charm, and character of White Bear, which is why I didn't want anything to do with a bus line because that just wasn't White Bear. And I recognize that we have a vibe, a feel. And if these trees mean that much to folks, then I'm forced to make a decision and make a recommendation. Are 15 spots important to the businesses? Yeah, I think it is. Are these trees more important to the community that it outweighs that? Yeah, I think I've been convinced through many, many emails and all of you testifying. So having said that, again, I appreciated one of the people who said this is a difficult decision. I don't envy your job. Thank you. I appreciate you having some respect for that because it's not black and white. These are the balancing acts that elected officials that are just members of the community like you are trying to figure out and make good decisions. So on this one, I changed my opinion on this, and while I still think it's a practical solution, I'm convinced overwhelmingly that these are trees that we ought to save. And I would hope that our engineering can put forth a proposal to keep these trees, with one slight caveat to that. There is a fourth tree that tree experts are saying isn't in the best of condition, and I think it makes sense that if we're going to save three, that one remaining tree that is closest to the building, that does have limbs that are falling, that makes sense to get rid of. So that's the direction I would like to see us go, is to preserve the three primary trees that the experts say are healthy, and if the fourth one truly is in a state of decline and probably isn't going to last that much longer, or we don't know, then I would support taking out that one tree. So thank you again, all of you, for testifying, and with that, I'll pipe down and throw it to the council. Council, do we have questions for Mr. Coppy? Comments? I will note we're not making any decisions tonight. This was just a public hearing, but that's where I stand on it, so I wanted to get those thoughts out on the table. Council. Councilmember Walsh.
I do have a question for Mr. Coppy. A couple, actually. So one, the fourth tree, as it's been referred to, the one that's in a little bit of stress, what does that get us in net parking if we take that one down? Does that get us a spot or two? What are we looking at?
Mayor, members of the council, probably one or two stalls. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could, is it the 15 minus 1, as we're at 14 then, maybe, or we're not quite gaining as much? No, I guess it's the other way around. Well, yeah, we would. No, it would be, we would not, well, whatever the math is, yeah, one or two. Then the mayor brought this up too, the concern of the reconstruction concern. So there's a pretty big, obviously this is what's taking up all the space, is the grassy area that supports the trees and the root system. So a couple questions. One, somebody mentioned, the first time I've heard it, is that the tree was over pruned years ago, and that's because they don't really have the greatest canopy. Is that so? My question was, I hadn't heard that till tonight. Is the grassy area limit the canopy? Is it sort of the roots can't go any further because they start hitting a pavement area on top, or is it the pruning? What do you think explains that?
Mayor, members of the council, I've talked to a few folks that have had experienced the pruning component of it, and somebody who had spoke tonight mentioned it, that they can initially weren't sure how the trees were going to react to it. They have survived. The Rainbow Tree Carrier continues to say that they thrive, they keep budding, they generally are healthy trees. So other than the look of it, really
does the ground space, grassy area limit the canopy, or is it?
Typically, yes. Mayor, members of the council, typically canopy of a tree is limited typically to, or at least that drip line is the susceptible area for that. Not that they can't grow beyond it. Obviously, we have trees that grow in, boulevards, things like that, that are hanging over the roadway. So not necessarily limiting it, but somebody mentioned the activity under that drip line. We do, anytime we do construction in areas like that, we take measures to we do root cutting, things like that, to help minimize the impact to those trees. And the big thing that damages them is when you dig next to them and you rip roots out, and you do measures to keep that to a minimum.
So that's my question. So you're confident this will be your project overseeing it. We'll have a contractor out there, but you're confident we can redo the parking lot and keep the trees with those precautions?
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, yes. We do it all the time with our road reconstruction projects. We redoing curbs. We take extra measures during construction to protect trees that are near the construction area.
Okay. Well, my last question is for you, I guess. You just said we're not going to make a decision tonight. What is the decision point, and how does it work?
Well, I think the direction would be to send it back to staff so that the next meeting, when we approve the plans, that's part of it. But I'm open to some commentary from staff on what the process is. So we've got review preliminary layout, Yeah, that's, I think, what it is. That's at the next council meeting, Councilmember Walsh, or you're looking at this. That's when we're doing it. I think this was proactive planning early enough so that we know when we do ultimately do it, we're not having a debate about the broader parking lot plans. This was a discrete issue as part of the broader approval of the 4 parking lots. So there will be a decision, and whether we want to cut down the trees or keep them will impact the plans that we ultimately adopt, which is not before us tonight. Anyone else on the council? Don't have to speak. It's not an action item. Councilmember West.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everybody coming tonight and sharing your thoughts about keeping the trees. I did actually get a phone call, and by the way, I don't, like, even with the dog park, I didn't get really phone calls. I had conversations, but I didn't get phone calls about that. I got 2 phone calls this afternoon, one from a business member who did say, listen, this actually affects me, but I care about the trees. So he wanted to keep the trees, just as a kind of point of information. I appreciate, the community coming out and sharing information. Like the mayor says, it is really tricky to balance kind of the various different needs in the community, and it always helps to hear from people in the community about what they're thinking to help at least me make the decisions the best that I can. Some of the things that I was thinking about, and the woman who was talking about the vibe, I really hope that your teenagers find this recording and watch it, because I think that would be really totally great. But I do agree that I think the trees do add to the welcoming space that there is in the downtown, and that I really do appreciate that. I also think, with the many benefits, and you all did a really great job talking about all the different benefits. Even kind of the practical, like how many, if we were actually going to replace the size of those trees with little saplings, like how many that would actually have to be, that's a lot of them. So even kind of the practicality of it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think, although people are challenged with parking, I think it is more of a perception than it is kind of a reality of a parking issue. And can't we all use a little more exercise anyways? I mean, honestly. Yeah, I think that's it. I just really appreciate everybody sharing your opinion. Thanks so much.
Any other thoughts from the council or questions for Mr. Coppy? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. So sometimes this work gets a little interesting. And when you say you're going to listen to the community, sometimes it takes you to places that you didn't think you were going to go. I've had that experience on this topic. So my background includes professional degrees in horticulture and agricultural economics. I crunch numbers at the margin because that's what economists do. We look at what's the net change that happens as a result, in this case, reducing 3 trees, and what's the impact of that. And I could get into details about rates of water infiltration and rates of carbon sequestration and the total volume of that in the whole ecosystem that we occupy. And I've also decided that that's not the right analysis to use, that those numbers, while useful, and frankly, I'll still pick a bone with anybody who wants to say, you know what, the square footage that we have there is massively important to our groundwater management. No, not so much. Massively important to carbon sequestration. No, not so much. But that's not the analysis that I'm going to use. What came to me through this conversation is that what distinguishes, Ms. Bolstead is, yes, so what makes a difference is the age of these trees and the character of the urban forest that we have distinguishes us from other suburbs, distinguishes our downtown from other places. We have a history and a gravitas and an ambiance. Those are old words. Vibe is the new one. That distinguish our downtown and make it a destination in a way that even if I could find it, I'm not sure I would think about going to downtown Woodbury. Just ain't my thing. So I too, over the past 3 weeks, I've spent about 4 or 5 hours walking around downtown White Bear for a variety of topics. As I've looked at all of our parking spaces and our on-street parking, we have enough. I think the issue in coming out of the mobility study is that it is a perceptual issue. It can be addressed through exercise. I'm on board with that. We don't need the trade-off is not worth it. I agree with the mayor in saying intellectually, yes, it's pragmatic. Yeah, but in the trade-off, I'm not so convinced. I was Friday afternoon, last Friday, at lunchtime, presumably the biggest, one of the biggest times during the day. We had plenty of spots. Other times of the year, my experience has been what several of you have described. Yeah, you might have to drive a little bit, but not too much. And I think that's a fair trade-off. So I think the things that I would suggest and the options that I'd encourage us to consider, if we're going to retain those trees, I like the idea of some type of plantings, preferably, maybe this is a project for the Environmental Commission, to look at some aspect of education. I don't know about putting picnic tables there or benches. I don't know, maybe. I really don't need to have Andy having to go and mow more grass. But doing something there that speaks to the value of our heritage, of our history. What can we do that adds value to the experience? And maybe it's nothing. Maybe we just leave the trees as they are and the walk space. But I'm inclined to think that there's something there that we haven't thought enough about to add value. So I would encourage us to think about that. The fourth tree, I don't know what to think about that exactly. My inclination is to say, you know what, it might be declining, as are several of us. And eventually it may fall. At that time, we can make that decision. I'm not itching to find a whole lot more. I don't feel a need to drive to the last inch to find another 1 or 2 parking spots. I think we can find them on street. We can manage the bump outs differently. We can do a variety of other strategies. So that's where I'm inclined to go. And so thank you for your inputs and for all the communications that have been had over the last couple of weeks.
Any other comments from the council?
Yeah.
Councilmember Hughes.
I think almost my whole ward is here, so it would be, I think I've been told what to think, which is appropriate. So I would welcome any kind of layout that keeps the 4 trees. And I sort of feel like, Mr. Edberg, you didn't say this, but there's a little bit of there's the perception of a parking problem, and there's a perception of the value of the trees. And so I agree with you, it probably doesn't do everything that was claimed they will do, but there is that, when you walk into the town, there's that perception of what the feeling is and it gives. And like the mayor, I like our small town and want to keep that vibe alive.
Any other final thoughts? So I'll ask Mr. Coffey, do you need any additional direction from the council for purposes of the next stages of approving the plans for this and other parking lots?
Mayor, members of the council, I believe your dialogue tonight gives me enough direction to provide the layouts that you have requested, and we'll bring those back on the 22nd.
A final note, the fourth tree, the one that isn't in good of health. If the council wants to keep it, that's fine with me. I think we should put some more thought into that for purposes of future planning. If we needed to pivot on that, because it's a little tab, I assume we could do that pretty easily. The bigger issue is the 3 trees that we need to have kind of drilled down to move on.
Mayor, members of the council, that is correct.
Okay, good. All right. Good thoughts, council. Thank you all in the community for testifying, and we'll be finalizing these plans in the coming weeks. Thank you. Council, we're going to take a 5-minute recess just to allow certain people to clear out. We'll be back at 9 o'clock. Back at 9. Code regarding dogs. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. A few less people here for this hearing, it looks like. So we're here for a first reading on an ordinance related to dogs. The council obviously had some recent discussions about the Mataska Park Dog Beach. One issue that was raised during those meetings recently, you'll all recall, was the fact that in 2017, there was a rule enacted for the dog beach requiring dogs to be leashed at all times. It was a 30-foot leash requirement. That rule was never adopted by ordinance or codified. Not really sure why, but that's the reality. And what that means is it can't really be effectively enforced. It can be communicated, you can put signs up, but people can call the police, and there's not much that law enforcement can do about that just because it isn't legislation. So the council directed staff to prepare an ordinance incorporating that rule into the city code, which we did in the draft ordinance before you. I also want to point out, and I noted this in the memo that's in your packet, while we were preparing that ordinance, staff was reviewing the code. We were talking about different things, leash requirements, what dogs are doing, and we realized that the language, it leaves a lot of gray area as it relates to dogs. Specifically, people can be with their dog on public property, on sidewalks and parks, streets, wherever, without a leash, as long as the dog is, and this is the verbatim from the ordinance, at heel beside the owner or keeper and obedient to that person's command, which is, we talked to Chief Hager about this. I mean, it's very difficult to enforce that, to police that, to issue citations. And it's a public safety issue, just given the unpredictability of animals, other things that could happen in the surrounding environment. Maybe it's a very well-trained dog, but things happen. And to address that, we put together a draft ordinance. It effectively requires that dogs remain leashed at all times when they're not on private property or in their vehicle of whomever is keeping them. I'd point out that the vast majority of cities throughout the metro area do have an ordinance in place that already requires that. White Bear Lake is one of the few exceptions. For example, Shoreview, Matamidi, Vadnais Heights, Hugo, New Brighton, Arden Hills, Oakdale, Roseville, Maplewood, all close by cities that require dogs to be on a leash when you're not in your yard or on private property that you have the permission to be on with your animal. And I'd also say one factor that led to this recommendation was when staff was talking about this, is the notion that people would be bringing their dogs to the dog beach. They wouldn't be on a leash. They'd be walking from cars down the street to get there, and then when they get there, they have to leash up when entering a dog-specific exercise area. It just seemed a bit illogical, and we thought we'd bring this to the council as an opportunity to address a gray area in the code and a potential safety issue and enforcement issue for law enforcement. So those are really the two primary issues addressed by this ordinance. They're not mutually exclusive. You can certainly simply codify the Mataska Park 30-foot leash requirement and get rid of the other modification that we made here. But we did think it was important enough to bring to council for discussion and some policy consideration. And again, we're here tonight for a first reading and a public hearing, after which the council certainly can discuss the policies, direct staff to make changes or leave it alone, and we'd bring it back at a future meeting if that's the direction we're given for a second reading and potential adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I don't have any questions. I'll just make one comment. I think your average resident would be surprised to find out that we don't have a leash law. I think if you're really in the know, you kind of know that, but I'll just speak for one person that I may or may not be married to. I told her about that, and she said, what, we don't have a leash law in this city? So that's one person, but to be honest, until we had this discussion, I just assumed we had a leash law too. So I've got no problem with this. It makes good sense to shore up this gray spot in our law, and we've done our first reading. So, council, do we have any questions for Mr. Anderson? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Anderson, in your verbal comments just now, you added a phrase that I was not sure where that's found in the language. You mentioned, so the language speaks to the property of the person who's owning the dog, owning, harboring, or keeping the dog. So it's that person's property. But you added something about if they were, that struck me as if you've got your dog at a neighbor's or a friend's or somebody else's, where is that covered under the, or what's the phraseology to look for that allows, I don't have one, but if I had my poodle and took him to, down the street, visiting backyard barbecue, somebody else, wherever, your house, okay, fine. Do they have to be on a leash when I'm a guest? And where's that language in here that we would look at?
I think it's already in there. I mean, the way I interpret the ordinance is on a person owning, harboring, or keeping the dog's property. In my opinion, if someone brings their dog to your house, you're keeping that dog on your property for that moment. And I don't think that there would be an issue having it off leash. If the council wanted clarity on that or more clarity, we're happy to implement that sort of language into the ordinance. But as written, I don't think there would be any preclusion from somebody to bring their dog to a friend's house and let it roam free in the backyard, as long as they have the permission to do that from the friend.
So in that case, the person would be the new homeowner, the second homeowner, and they would be keeping, okay, got it.
At least temporarily, they'd be keeping the dog, yeah.
Okay, I understand that. That makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will open this up for a public hearing. I have no names on the list, and there's only 2 people left in the audience, but if either of you two would like to speak to this issue, please step forward. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. All right, any final thoughts on this? It was just the first reading, so we've done what we are required to do. Councilmember Hughes.
Yeah, stupid question. I actually think the lake belongs. Sorry. I actually think the lake belongs to Ramsey County, so it wouldn't really be in the city. But what about a dog in a boat? Is that a motor vehicle? Or a dog on a, see lots of dogs on paddleboards. Love it. So cute. And they're wearing their life jackets.
It's a good question. Yeah. I haven't thought about that.
I think that's county, but
Sure.
I just didn't know.
Yeah, and I don't know, Chief, if we enforce ordinances on the water or not. I mean, I know there's a conservation district. I don't know if they have ordinances or if the county has jurisdiction over things that happen on the water. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thankfully, no, we don't enforce laws on the water. That's the county's jurisdiction. I don't know the answer to that question about boats and.
I think somebody'd have to complain. I just was kind of, as I was listening, I was like, oh, I see lots of dogs in boats.
Sure.
It seems to me, my understanding is that Ramsey County patrols the lake. We have a conservation district which kind of governs regulatory function of the lake, which is unique. There's 2 out of our 10,000 plus lakes, us and Minnetonka. And then I believe the DNR technically has jurisdiction and owns all lakes in Minnesota. So either way, not our problem. That's my thought.
Mayor, that's exactly what I was going to say. Water Patrol enforces all things on White Bear Lake and Conservation District, and then ultimately owned by the DNR.
All right, Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you. One other technical, but so I remember the debate the evening. Member Walsh might also, I think. And I might be the only 2 that were here then, maybe, about the adequacy of a 30-foot leash and whether there are danger issues, especially around water for animals on leash in water, risk of drowning, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Have we had any experience, any guidance? Is there anything that might be known about whether that's positive or a potentially threatening requirement? That was a question. I don't know that we ever answered that question. There were assertions both ways, but I haven't heard it since, so I'm just trying to think my way through that.
Mayor, Councilmember Edberg, that's a great question. I don't have an answer to that because I agree with you that I don't think we have answered that question, and I haven't polled enough people. There was a lot of contradiction with, do they need a leash? Do they not? What's enforceable? Right. So I don't think we really have a good data point to answer that question at this point.
Okay. And would a violation, so I'm going to switch gears, would a violation, somebody's walking their dog, whether they're under control or not, they're not on a leash, is that a misdemeanor? How do we punish that, and what options do we have for saying, this is really severe, or hey, just don't do this, and to remind you, we're going to do ding, 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 whatever. How do we look at that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the general rule is that any code violation is a misdemeanor under state law. What I will say is I'm a former prosecutor. I've handled plenty of city code related misdemeanor offenses. A lot of them get handled in a payable fashion and they get reduced to a petty misdemeanor. But that is generally up to the prosecutor that's handling it, and ultimately if there's a conviction and not a plea deal, the judge who imposes a sentence. Having prosecuted dog at large cases for long enough, there are repeat offenders where it makes sense to leave that in place, in my opinion, because I think there's always the ability to reduce it down. I don't know if Chief Hager has thoughts on this, but I think a lot of prosecutors and law enforcement are very comfortable with having misdemeanors, at least things that are charged as misdemeanors, reduced down. Someone comes in, pays a fine, they're sent on their way. It's reduced to a petty, which is not a crime. They're not deemed a criminal under state law. It doesn't go on their criminal record, which is a big deal to people. But if they are repeat offenders, it's very nice to have the ability, that tool, to say, look, you've done this 3 times, your dog has almost hurt somebody, or multiple dogs have done that, or whatever the case may be for the violation. We want to make sure, one, you're put on probation maybe for 90 days or 6 months or something, so you don't do it again, so you pay attention. And the only way to do that is to have a misdemeanor penalty, because you have to put someone on probation, hold something over their head. Typically, it's a couple days in jail or a big fine, and that's really the only way to do it. So again, I think there's many code violations that cities have enacted in their ordinances and their city code that are technically, you can penalize them up to a misdemeanor, but it's very infrequent for that to actually happen, especially with first-time offenders.
And you mentioned a fine. Would that be imposed by the court, or is there an administrative citation component to that allows us to take action in the absence of court? How do we?
The city has multiple tools in its enforcement, tool belt. It can go the administrative citation route, which it has nothing to do with district court. You stay out of the criminal or the petty misdemeanor world, and it doesn't even go to the prosecutor. It's just handled administratively by staff. I don't know how robust our administrative citation program is in White Bear Lake. I haven't heard a bunch about it, and I'm relatively new, so I'd be curious.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, a few years ago now, the state took a pretty rigid stance on administrative citations. They're almost don't exist anymore. We can write administrative citations for a very few number of statutes that are crimes that people commit: speeding, stop sign, and then some equipment violations on a vehicle. That's about it. And there's a dictated by the state how much an administrative ticket could cost. It's $60 across the board. Most agencies have kind of shied away from doing administrative citations for that reason. That it used to be in the day, as you remember, you'd write administrative citations, kind of do the person a favor, wouldn't go on their driver's record. Possibly they were a little more expensive, and the city got a big chunk of the money, and the state just kind of took a stand on that because they weren't getting their cut, I suspect, and said, this is how much an administrative citation is, and these are the things you can write them for, and that's it. And dog at large, or our city ordinances, by and large, can't write city administrative citations for those.
What I would add to that too is, there is some authority for charter cities to explore administrative citations a bit more than other cities can. I I certainly know the recent statutes that talk about the parking, the very limited nature of what you can do for parking. I've always taken the position, I know my colleagues have, that typically extends, at least arguably extends, only to the vehicle enforcement arena. And so cities have been, at least recently, sort of trying to get this administrative citation program more, utilize it more often, because, you know, when your only options are criminal citation, which a lot of judges will see a city code violation and say, are you serious? You're gonna fill up my already busy docket, criminal docket that has felonies and other things with code violations, and they get frustrated with it, candidly, especially in the metro. Or civil. You can do civil enforcement too, but that's really time consuming and expensive. So cities are starting to do more of that. And we can have that discussion. Maybe it's probably a different, more global discussion about just code enforcement and those kinds of tools. But I have seen some cities, especially charter cities like White Bear Lake, successfully implement those programs more recently, notwithstanding the good points that Chief Hager makes. So,
One last. So I have a strong suspicion that there's going to be an education period and an education process. As I'm not opposed to the language. I don't know that the message is going to get out and be universally adopted in an immediate fashion. I watched what walks by my street, and I just can picture what that's going to look like. Do we have some, I am not opposed to the folks who are multiple offenders. Yeah, let's amp that up. But for first time, is there a way of using warnings and, you know, hey, here's the rule. You may not have known it. This is the rule, ding, ding, ding. I don't need that answer tonight, but pondering it for a future conversation, unless we know how we want to think about that implementation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I like to think that our officers make really good decisions, and although we have discretion, my officers have a discretion, but a message will be sent that, to your point, that this is new for everybody. You know, we don't need to come down hard on everybody. We need to kind of maybe ease into this. I don't know what that period of time of easing is, but I'm glad that if this happens, it's starting at the beginning of the summer, so we can kind of take control of it right away and maybe send a few messages out before, you know, it could get carried away.
Thank you.
Well, I know it's late, but I'm going to keep this conversation going because you raised this, and I think the enforcement component is important. Whether we do it through this or we have that global conversation, I think we should. I recall a couple of years ago that the state cracking down on the administrative tickets, and others can disagree. I'll take the cynical view. That was a cash grab for the state. They wanted $130 going to the state instead of $50 or $70 going to the city. That's why they did it. And the hook that they had is traffic violations, moving violations, and then it doesn't get reported to DPS, so it doesn't hit your insurance, and you can't track that. Great. We're talking about a local code and people that are on a leash. That should be squarely in our jurisdiction. And to the extent that our officers in their discretion think that a fine should be imposed, those dollars should flow to the city. So I think we should have that broader conversation about administrative tickets, and I think a leash violation is the perfect place to start. I agree with our city attorney that one thing we need to consider is those repeat offenders and how do we crack down. In theory, someone can say, you know what, I don't care. Cost of doing business, I pay $70 per leash law violation. I get hit a couple times a summer, big deal. So my question would be, can we build out a structure broadly in our code or specific to leash laws that make it an enhanceable offense, where X amount of administrative tickets within a period of time, it's enhanceable to a misdemeanor? Is that a structure that you are familiar with? And if so, is that a possibility?
Yes, I think it is a possibility. I mean, I think all these things we're talking about are feasible, and we can make them happen. What I would add too is the provision right now in our administrative offense ordinance, I just pulled it up, is that if you fail to pay that you can later be charged with the actual misdemeanor or petty misdemeanor. So it can ramp up if you don't pay it. But, my other thought is you could, and it becomes a bit difficult because there's probably a record-keeping component to it. And I'd be curious, how often the police plan on dealing with offenders. I mean, I'm just, Mayor, you made a good point. A lot of people probably think you just have to have dogs on a leash at all times. I'm curious if there's a lot of them out there day to day that aren't on leashes, and if this is going to be an actual, issue long term, or if it's going to be that education piece. Once people get it, you're never going to have to deal with it again, because in my experience, you don't see a ton of dog at large cases. It just, the times they get charged out is when an incident happens, when someone gets hurt or attacked, or that's when people call the police, and that's when someone gets charged. And I don't think the police are noticing this all too often. But again, I'd be curious what your thoughts are, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, last year in '24, we had 174 calls of dog at large. I don't know if a lot of those stemmed from certain areas of the city specifically, or if it's just kind of a general broad. We didn't take a look at each geographical location of those, but we had 174, 132 of them we caught and brought somewhere, whether it's to our police department and advertise it on Facebook, or to the appropriate facility for the dogs, and then 42 of them we were unable to find or locate. So we have a share of them. We have a share of bites every year of humans. We had 18, we average about 6 a year, 18 in the last 3 years, dog bites, and 25 of them, and 18 of them were unleashed dogs that bit people. So those are if we're looking at, is it a problem here, is it not a problem here? As I said, we average about 6 a year of unleashed dog bites, and we average per month about 15 dogs at large calls that necessitate us to respond and look for the dog and pick it up and that kind of thing.
If I may add, if I recall correctly, I think about 12 of those calls were from the dog beach in the last summer, I think. So I know you hadn't broken them out, but that's what I recall. Don't quote me on that, White Bear Press.
I think that was right in that ballpark, 10 to 12, yeah.
The 172, I think you said. What it sounds like too is a lot of those are calls about stray dogs. I mean, to me, there's a difference between someone walking their dog without a leash and letting them run around, and a dog that just gets out, stray dog that you're actually collecting and bringing back to the station, right?
That's probably accurate.
So if we were to approach this, Mr. Anderson, in an ideal world, I'd say, let's do it with this ordinance, but I recognize that could kind of turn on its head other areas of the code that we have written differently. So I'd be looking for your guidance, if it were the will of the council, to maybe not be quite so draconian with this particular ordinance. Should we be approaching that in this ordinance, or should we take a pause and say, let's take more of a global look at our code and how we enforce it, and kind of beef up our administrative citation section?
My recommendation, just given what we've been talking about recently and sort of the fact that it's about to be 70 degrees, we all hope, and there's going to be more people outside, is to get this ordinance in place and then direct staff to have that administrative citation conversation separately, because I do think it doesn't make sense to sort of pick and choose what violations you're going to enforce with administrative citations. I do think, it's certainly up to the council, but it may not be a bad idea to say, if an individual is caught with a dog at large the first time, that's a petty misdemeanor. And if you're caught and charged the second time, if you have one, in the last 12 months or 24 months or something, you look back and it's enhanceable, and you could theoretically be charged with a misdemeanor. That doesn't mean that the prosecutor or the judge won't still reduce it to a petty, but at least gives, it maybe allows folks to not necessarily have that significant court date and everything else associated with their first offense when we're adopting some new rules. Because what I would say is, if you're charging someone with a misdemeanor, they're always going to have a court date, and they're always going to have to go talk to somebody about it. If you're charging them with a petty, it's coded in the statewide offense and the district court's offense database as a payable offense. They can go online, they can pay the ticket. The fine itself all comes back to the city, the jurisdiction who issued the citation. There are what's called court surcharges and fees, $85, I believe, is the total. They might have increased recently a little bit. That does go to district court, but that's because their system is handling the ticket, and they're usually, if the person wants to challenge it, they're able to come in and fight it in court. So just an idea, Mayor, that maybe you do kind of build in an enhanceability to this dog at large provision, that provision that we're changing here. But then let staff separately have the administrative citation discussion, because I think that's a more, like, again, global, big picture thing.
So my question is then, if we have that more global conversation about administrative tickets, how does that dovetail into what we adopt in 2 weeks if we don't specifically say it in there?
Well, I think it would be, I haven't looked at it, but there is an administrative offense chapter in your city code. I assume the charter has some authority for that, which I would argue allows the city to utilize that tool, that we have that tool at our disposal if we want to use it. The, I guess, policy of law enforcement and staff about how to and when to use those tools, I think is really a decision for that will be trickle down from the council's directives and ideas. I mean, generally, staff would be left to their discretion to choose which ones are most appropriate. You could certainly say, staff, you have that tool available. Use it when you think it's right. Use other ones when you think they're right. But if you want to come up with a more, schematic policy about when we use administrative citations, what situations, what types of offenses they're appropriate for, and have that discussion at a policy level. I think that's fine too. I guess it's your prerogative as a council to determine that. I know Maplewood went through this about 5 or 6 years ago, and they adopted an actual policy document that says, we're going to try this first. If it doesn't work, then we're going to try this, and if it doesn't, that's mostly related though to property-related issues like public nuisances and things. Because what you can do with administrative citations with property-related offenses is if they don't pay it, you can assess the property back for it. At least if you have that in your code, you can. This one's a little trickier because it's not happening on your property, right?
Can I jump in? Since I've started here, it's been on the staff's wish list to get administrative citations for land use matters, for code enforcement matters. So I would, I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but I would really welcome a broader conversation for this. I know community development staff would greatly appreciate the ability to do that for kind of those repeat that we just get no traction on. It would be very welcome to have administrative citations for those types of matters, probably in addition to this.
Well, I mean, I would welcome that conversation. Council weigh in, not necessarily specifically germane to this, but what I'm getting at within this ordinance is, one, I don't want to be heavy-handed with a leash law and say it's a petty misdemeanor. Two, and really selfishly, I don't want any money to flow to the state for someone who violates a leash law in White Bear Lake. So we don't have to do it right now with this, but I think we should do it sooner rather than later, and then have that more global discussion. I think there's some things that the administrative citation doesn't lend itself to, and then other dog leash violation type things where I want it to be that. And I think it gives officers just another tool in their tool belt to exercise discretion. If it's an incremental citation, that just makes sense to me. So would the council be welcome, would it be open to having that conversation at a soon-to-be work session? I'm seeing head nods, which is enough for right now. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you. So kind of three related but distinct thoughts. One is, I wasn't tracking with the dollar values of the various levels of fines and so forth
when it comes back in a couple of weeks, could we have some information on what that fee structure looks like, just so I have a sense of what the financial implications are for different levels of enforcement? So that's number one. Number two, I'm on board with you, Mayor, on this broader conversation about administrative citations. When I was first elected, that was more of a practice in our community, and then for various reasons in the recent legislation, that's diminished. So bringing that back, I think, would be a good approach for us. So totally on board with that. And then in terms of enforcement, I want to go back to it's like, let the officers have some discretion about a warning, a petty, continued, then it ramps up. So it's progressive in nature. That's what appeals to me, especially because we're changing a culture and a pattern that has been long entrenched and will take some time to, not to mention what happens when people who are new to the community and just plain don't know. It's like having some level of discretion to address that, practiced on the ground, strikes me as an option, but not long-term tolerance, and certainly not repeat tolerance.
Yeah, and in terms of the fines, I mean, if you deem the first offense or first cited offense a petty, you can't fine the person more than $300. That's the maximum monetary penalty on a petty misdemeanor. It can be anywhere below that, but up to 300. And once, here's one thing I would say with dog at large cases where it's, maybe it would be not a bad idea not to have the ramp up, but rather leave it to officer discretion. If you can't charge someone with a misdemeanor, they can't be required to come to court and pay restitution. And with dog cases, when I was a baby prosecutor and had to prosecute dog at large cases, the times we had to do it is when somebody's dog attacked somebody, hurt somebody. There was medical bills. They damaged something, they destroyed something, or hurt somebody, and that person under state law has the right to request restitution, and that the person pay them back through the criminal process, and they're put on probation. If they don't pay it, they could be deemed in violation of their probation. So officers typically use that when they were, I think, using sound discretion. They knew there was a victim who was going to have some rights, and that should be given that opportunity. So they charged that individual with a misdemeanor. If that person's dog had escaped and didn't hurt somebody or didn't attack somebody, that officer might very well have not made that decision, which, again, I think is up to that individual officer depending on the circumstances. But, I think we can all probably appreciate that, not every loose dog is equal to another. It kind of depends on what unfolds when that situation happens. So maybe that's a reason just to deem it a misdemeanor. It still gives everyone the ability to use discretion, from the officer all the way to the prosecutor and to the judge. And if there's reason to be more serious with it, they can do that. That's my kind of hindsight answer now after thinking about this and talking through it this evening, which it's been helpful. That said, if the council wanted to do something different, like a petty for the first offense, and then it ramps up after that, we can think about that as well.
This probably is a better question for a work session, but just briefly, but we can adjust downward too and have a broader spectrum for if it's a dog bite case, it could be a misdemeanor, but if it's not, it could be an administrative ticket.
Sure.
So I think that's the direction I'm going. I think that's good advice.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that, for those circumstances. But downward. Okay, so that'll be a topic of future conversation, and the proposed ordinance is as good as is what I'm seeing. Good? Yes? Okay. We've had our first reading. Item 7, unfinished business, nothing scheduled. Item 8A, issuance of general obligation improvement bonds for the 2025 pavement rehabilitation project and equipment certificates for a fire truck. Ms. Kinsvater, thanks for sticking with us.
Yes.
You're up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you approved the contract for the 2025 pavement rehabilitation project tonight, staff has begun working on the debt issue that will fund both that project and the equipment certificates to purchase the fire truck. The fire truck was actually approved at the July 11th, 2023 meeting due to the long lead time in manufacturing. So at that point, you passed a resolution saying you wanted to place the order and would be issuing equipment certificates when the truck was going to be completed. Staff has been working with Ellers, our municipal advisors, and they prepared an initial preliminary debt service schedules just for our planning purposes here. And in that preliminary debt run, they used a true interest cost of 3.6643%. So as we think about those, the true interest cost, that is the market interest rate that for a bond qualified or a bank qualified issue, so that would be we're issuing under $10 million in bonds and with our AA rating, and that interest rate was as of March 25th, 2025. They added a half a basis point to the rate at that date to get to that 3.6%, just for if there are any fluctuations in the market between when they did that run and when we sell the bonds. And the true interest cost is the actual interest cost of borrowing the funds, taking into account the coupon rates and the underwriters' discounts or premiums. So it's all in. As we look at that interest rate, it's really in line with where our interest rates have been on our other recent issues. That 3.6, if that were to be our interest rate that we get, in our 2024A improvement bonds, our true interest cost was 3.42%. In our 2023A bonds for our public safety facility, we had gotten 3.72%. So very comparable to where it's been, a little bit higher than where our bonds were when we issued them in 2018, but in line. So as we mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there are two components. So we'd be issuing improvement bonds for the pavement project. The par amount of those bonds is $1,425,000. There's a 15-year life on that bond issue. The financing plan includes a special assessment component for the property owners that benefit from this project. The special assessments have a 15-year term, so that aligns with the 15-year term of our bond. And our calculations anticipate that there will be $303,000 in assessments. So the city will combine those special assessments that we collect with the property tax levy to pay these bonds. The annual tax levy will range between about $101,000 and $107,000 through the life of that bond. It varies each year. The 2026 tax levy, so we'd be issuing the bonds now, then we'd be levying for the amount in 2026, and our first principal payment would be in the beginning of 2027. So the amount that we would levy in 2026 would be $103,531, which is a 0.75% increase over our 2025 tax levy. The equipment certificates that would fund the fire truck purchase have a par amount of $1,005,000, and those have a 10-year life. So the annual tax levy on the 10-year term ranges between $123,000 and $128,000. Similarly, I looked at the effect of the 2026 tax levy, which would be $123,351, which is just under a % increase. As we think about where the market has been over the past couple of weeks, there have been some changes. I reached out to Stacy just with Ellers to kind of give us some information on those events and see how that would affect our tax issue. She reminded me that there's that 50 basis points of the cushion that is in our interest rates as we look at these numbers to give us, just because of these uncertainties that are going on. Rates will probably be a little volatile between now and the sale date. But it's really difficult to quantify what the impact will be as we go. So we'll know more as we go through these weeks to come. We don't know that right now. So the Eller staff will stay in contact with us and as we kind of watch those markets. In the end, it's really the rates when we do our bond sale, the rates that are there is what the market is willing to pay for our bonds. The city could decide up to the date of the sale to pull the issue if the market was really bad and we didn't feel it was right. And then we would resell the bonds at another time. That's something to consider, knowing that we have a project that we've already agreed to and we have a fire truck that we know is coming and we're going to be paying for. So if something were to happen and we did that, we'd need to come up with internal financing to cover the expenditures that we had until the date when we were to do the sale of the bonds. We do have a reimbursement in our resolution that you're passing tonight. There is a reimbursement clause saying that if there are expenditures paid before we get the proceeds, that we can reimburse ourselves with the bond proceeds. So as I mentioned, Ellers will continue to watch the market and be in contact and just keep us up to date, kind of where we are on that sale. So after going through all of that, I recommend that the City Council adopt the attached resolution. This would authorize Ellers to assist us in preparing for the bond sale. It would establish May 13th, 2025 as the meeting date for considering the bond sale proposal and set May 13th, 2025 as the date for awarding the bond sale at that council meeting. We do have Stacy with Ellers here with us tonight so that if you have any further questions kind of about the market or the bonds, she would be able to answer those for us.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsvater. I have a question regarding the equipment certificate funding the fire truck. So we're using debt to purchase the fire truck, correct? Is that new? Is that the first time we've done that, or has that always kind of been our standard practice to use debt to purchase fire trucks and other pieces of equipment?
Mr. Mayor, this would be the second time that we've used debt to purchase a fire truck.
When was the other time? Ballpark.
2020, 2021?
2020, maybe 2021.
When we got the ladder truck.
Last truck.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Walsh.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think since Stacy stayed for the whole meeting and listened to all those discussions of trees, that I think she should come up here and answer a question. So I've got a question for her. No, about interest rates.
Oh, all right.
I seriously have a question. And I'll talk while you're walking. The AA plus rating that we have, the first question is it's generic. It's not specific to what we're doing tonight, but what kinds of things can we do to improve that rating? So that's a good rating, but we could be AAA, right?
Mayor, Councilmember, that's a great question and one we get often by those that are not AAA clients. You're a little bit limited in what you can actually do because there's certain things that just won't bring you up to AAA, and a lot of it's based upon size, right, of the community that you are. It can be some of the wealth indices that you have. So there's things out of your control that you can't do. The things that are in your control, you've already done. You've done your long-range financial management planning. You've been very good stewards of having a good fund balance when you have good liquidity in your community, which is great, and they would look favorably upon that. So when you look at all the factors, I mean, it's probably the ones that are more out of your control that may be a little bit more difficult to eventually attain that. But it's something we always have the discussion with the rating agencies as we go through that process about that desire and their perspective on if and when you will ever attain that AAA.
So I guess my follow-up question probably doesn't work because of the answer you gave, but how much, I always struggle with what the benefit of the higher rating is going to be a lower interest rate, which means lower payments over time. You can sort of quantify that, I suppose, if you told us what you project the cost would be for a AAA instead of a AA plus. And then sort of you got to weigh that against what it would cost us to get the AAA bond rating, but we probably can't even get it anyway, so it's probably a moot question.
Well, Mayor, Councilmember, I think probably over the last 5+ years or so, the difference between the basis points between a AAA and a AA hasn't been overly significant on the short end. So like in the first 5 years, it's maybe 5 basis points to 10. It's when you start to go out further in your debt issuance of 20 years that maybe that spread goes a little bit bigger. So again, it's some savings. It's not overly significant. Past years, other times, recessions, other things, we've seen bigger spreads, but in the past several, it's not been overly significant.
Okay. Thanks for staying. Oh, more. See, I started somewhere.
So the stock market is definitely not the same as the bond market, though investors weigh off alternatives. So on the decision to pull a bond sale, okay, if we hit Black Friday or Black Monday or whatever, are you the entity that's going to advise us as to whether, hey, this is just not the right time for you to sell your bonds? Is that your role, and what are the things that you look for? Because I don't know. My gut tells me we haven't seen the last or the worst. But maybe, who knows? How do we prepare ourselves to be in a position to act if that happens to be the case on the day that we're selling?
Mayor, Councilmember, I think just to always remind folks, right, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, right? So if you look at just the interest rates over time, and Carrie had talked about some in just recent history where you've been at, I mean, all of the rates in your borrowing have been, well, probably, in that 3 or under 4%. And historically, we haven't seen significant changes. It's been a long time since we've seen those really, really high interest rates. And that's because it was just different times. It wasn't recessions, wasn't other things. So the factors that we look at when we're in these uncertain times, and this isn't the first time, right, that we've had this, is that we'll just be watching the market. So we're watching the market on a national basis and on the local basis, because sales are still happening. Because at the end of the day, cities still need to capitalize to do projects. Schools still need to capitalize to do projects. Counties still need to capitalize to do projects. So we'll look at that, and then we'll have those discussions. But at the end of the day, if your interest rate is 4% or 4.2, that's something that's just a factor that you have to look at, because when we can forecast, and I wish we all had that crystal ball that we could tell you with certainty, is it going to be better in 30 days? Is it going to be better in 6 months? We don't know. So I may not give you a lot of comfort,
I'm not sure
but
that was
we'll just be
comforting,
making it
but
up.
that's okay.
I have a motion. Do I have a motion and a second? Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution is passed. Thank you, Stacy.
Yes, and Mayor, if I
Thank
could
you,
just
Ms.
say
Kinsler.
one thing, is sitting through, so I've been sitting in council chambers for 30 years, through public hearings and all kinds of meetings. And what I could say tonight, it's been probably one of my most favorite, because it's a very passionate issue for folks. And how nice everybody was, and the levity, and like the couple quotes that I'm going to go back and tell people about that were just funny and awesome. And I would say, you guys have had lots of meetings. I'm sure you've had people who've been here not been so nice, right? So I saw maybe the best of White Bear Lake tonight, but I would say anyone who has to come up and speak to you guys on an issue that's very passionate about, take notes from that group. Because I think, how they presented themselves, what they did, obviously spoke to you guys. And it's, again, people are very passionate, and they did it in such a nice and dignified way. So anyway, it was enjoyable to stay.
Thank you. I think that's deserving of a AAA bond rating. Tell the underwriters. Yeah.
We charge admission to our future council meetings.
All right, item 9, discussion. Nothing scheduled. Item 10, communications from the city manager.
Thank you. I do not have slides. Sorry about that. Just one thing, like really hot off the press, MSP Magazine has featured White Bear Lake as one of their insider guides. So I have a copy for all the council members. Huge thank you to community members, Bill Voussard and Sarah Hansen at Explore White Bear, who helped put all of this together. I attended the launch party before this council meeting tonight, and it's really impressive, and to hear that, this really, well, it did start in White Bear Lake in 2017, and they're back here again. So it was really special. Everybody go out and grab a copy. I know many of our local businesses will have copies. So just hot off the press there, and that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. We're adjourned.